Tired of feeling bloated and uncomfortable after meals? Are you looking 6 months pregnant after you eat? In today's video, we're going to dive into the foods that could be contributing to these symptoms and making you feel bloated and horrible. And let's look at removing them and getting rid of this bloating for good. From sneaky flavorings to staple foods, we're going to be looking at all of those ingredients that are making you feel bloated, puffy, and uncomfortable day in, day out. I'll provide you with strategies so that you can identify what those foods are and then replace them with foods that are comparable so that you're not missing out and you actually have something to eat. The foods that contribute to bloating, they are legumes. And what are legumes? They are beans, lentils, and peas, filled with complex fibers that are very hard to digest for most people. Generally, they're quite good for the bowel, but if you've got a problem up in the upper or small intestine, they're going to ferment all about the place into a lot of gas. So best avoided at this particular time. Brassicas, and what are those? Those are cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These are sulfur-containing vegetables, and they can contribute to a lot of gas. In small amounts, they're generally tolerated. So you can remove them and then reintroduce them slowly, and you might kind of tolerate them here and there in your dietary pattern. Be aware that some popular fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut are based on cabbage. Now, dairy products. Around the world, lactose intolerance, so inability to digest lactose, is very common. Even if you could digest it as a kid, sometimes something goes awry in your gut and you can't digest it at this moment in time. So lactose-containing dairy, milk, yogurt, cream, and soft cheeses. Those are bries and camemberts, so you know. The other one is going to be dried fruit and stone fruits. Dried fruit is very concentrated. It needs to be rehydrated in the gut, and that takes time, which means that there's more chance of bacteria feeding on it and producing all this gas and making you bloated. Stone fruit are filled with things called polyols. These are kind of sugar-like compounds that we actually use as natural sweeteners, but they're very high in these fruits, along with sugar. All of that can contribute to gas formation, so best reducing those at this time as well. Now, the allium family is a group of vegetables, and we'll know them by garlic, onion, chives, spring onion, and eschalots or shallots. These are filled with lots of these fibers similar to legumes, plus the sulfur similar to the brassicas like broccoli. So they're a bit of a powerhouse to make people bloated and irritated in the gut, and again, best avoided. Now, that's a hard one. I'm going to give you some tips later on in the video to replace that flavor in your food so that you're not missing out. The other one's natural sweeteners, and I alluded to this with the stone fruit. Now, the only natural sweeteners you need to be aware of that could bloat you is mannitol and sorbitol. These are naturally occurring sweeteners. As I said, we find them in stone fruits and other forms of vegetables. But in high concentrations, let's say in chewing gum or a dark sugar-free chocolate, there's a lot in there, and that can really upset your day. So keep an eye out for those. Now, you may be thinking, what am I going to eat now? Well, there's plenty to consider. And I'm going to go through some of these foods so that you can make some swaps so that you can get rid of all the food that's bloating you and then replace it with food that doesn't. So when we look at legumes, when we modify one of them, which is soybean, into tofu or tempeh, we take out the majority of the fibers that are bloating individuals. So this is really helpful if I'm trying to treat one of my patients with bloating and IBS-related issues, but they're vegetarian. We'll use products like that to bring up their protein intake, and we'll avoid the other legumes for a period of time. Now, when we look at vegetables, I've only mentioned 2 families of vegetables, so that's not all of them. There's so many that you can consume: celery, carrot, broccoli, certain potatoes are generally tolerated, all of these different types of sprouts and other herbs. So basically anything except for the brassicas I mentioned and the allium family I mentioned, like garlic and onion. But if you really want a broccoli type flavor, you can actually use broccoli sprouts. They confer the same health benefit and have a similar flavor profile. Now, when we look at dairy products, you just need to avoid the ones that have lactose in them. Those are hard cheeses like Parmesan. You have semi-hard cheeses like cheddar, and some of them are actually labeled lactose-free, so they're guaranteed. And then we look at butter, and then you can modify milk to be lactose-free, and that's generally tolerate it. Now, when we look at fruits, I've mentioned dried fruit and stone fruits, but I'm going to actually give you a list of the best fruits that you could consume that will not contribute to your bloating. And they are berries, kiwi fruit, and passion fruit. These are all very low in sugar in general per like the serving size you'd eat. So a whole pound of berries has got less sugar than a banana, for instance. A lot of the pigments or there's other little beneficial compounds in those 3 fruit that I listed there that actually prevent bacteria or fungi feeding on them. So that's also why they work quite well. This one is a very strange herbal product that we use to flavor food. I'm stealing this from the Indian cuisine. This is called asafoetida or hing. Now, this product has got an oniony like garlic flavor, but none of the bloating compounds in there. So very, very helpful. A little goes a long way, so try not to add too much. It overpowers dishes, but it could be a really cool addition to add to a pasta sauce because you can't add garlic in there, or to a curry of any type of cuisine, which generally contains garlic. You can use it in asafoetida instead. People who are celiacs, just watch out. Asafoetida sometimes contains gluten, so just be careful on who you're getting it from. What natural sweeteners could you use? There's some additional ones that I'll mention as well. So erythritol and xylitol are generally safe sweeteners and won't contribute to bloating. But there are others as well. So you've got stevia, we have monk fruit, thormatin. They may add an amino acid called glycine in to sweeten things as well. They're all very safe and they still work for you in terms of they're healthy and not contributing to issues that artificial sweeteners do, but they don't bloat you either. You might be wondering, why am I even bloated from these foods in the first place? And a lot of my patients that I meet and help with this particular issue may have tolerated that list of foods that I just listed off before that are bloating them. They were tolerating that before, and now they can't. So in future videos, I'm going to go through this in a lot more detail, but I'll list them here today. So you have a bit of an idea of going, well, once I avoid these, then what next? IBS or irritable bowel syndrome, that can contribute to bloating, but it is a bit of what we call an umbrella condition. So essentially underneath that umbrella of IBS, there are reasons why you have IBS. So it can get a bit complicated. Don't worry, future videos will explain that for you and make it clear. One of those is SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The other one is hyperthyroidism. So essentially you have low thyroid function, which can contribute to changes in the gut. And then we also have stress. So when someone's under a lot of stress, they can develop conditions that make them very sensitive to normal digestive processes, and they can't tolerate this. So if I give you a quick example, I can get someone go on holiday and they tolerate all these different foods. They come back home to their job and all of their bills and a problem going on at home, and bang, they get their symptoms back again and they can't tolerate those foods anymore. Stay tuned for future videos to find out a little bit more in terms of those conditions. I'll list some further ones and go into a little bit more detail. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Catch me in the next one. Look forward to catching you there. Thanks, everyone.